Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Dazed and Confused podcast, where we trace the tangled history of cannabis policy in America. I'm your host, Christian Maynard, a doctoral candidate in sociology at Washington State University.
Go Cougs!
Today we examine the era of legalization.
And I was like, yeah, it's going to be called the Eras Tour. See you there.
And the actions taken by the Trump administration, first term, and the continued refinement at the state level. Under the first Trump administration, federal cannabis policy displayed signals of changing in either direction. Despite Trump's apparent support for cannabis for medical purposes,
Legalized marijuana is always a very difficult question for medicinal purposes, for medical purposes. Absolutely, it's fine.
he rarely talked about it. And in large part, federal cannabis policy remained unchanged. His appointments of cabinet officials and others in his social circle serve as valuable insight into his administration's approach, its actions and inactions. His appointment of Jeff Sessions as Attorney General raised alarm. Reports resurfaced about an incident during the 1980s when, as U.S. Attorney for Mobile, Alabama, Sessions remarked on a case involving the slaying of a black man by the KKK, stating that he thought the KKK were
okay until I found out they smoked pot.
Sessions also stated,
Recreational is a bike ride, a swim, going to the beach. Using a drug to put your brain in an altered state is not recreation. That is self-destructive behavior and escapism.
As part of his actions, Sessions created the Justice Department's Task Force on Crime Reduction and Public Safety, which was designed to undertake a review of existing policies in the areas of charging, sentencing, and marijuana to ensure consistency with the department's overall strategy on reducing violent crime and with the administration goals and priorities. As part of their recommendations, the task force opposed ramping up enforcement. Instead, it favored the current federal approach set by the Cole Memo. In a letter, Sessions had requested congressional leaders Mitch McConnell, Paul Ryan, Chuck Schumer, and Nancy Pelosi to remove the amendment, which restricted the ability of the federal government to prosecute state-regulated medical cannabis operations, stating,
This restriction was unwise, particularly in the midst of an historic drug epidemic and potentially long-term uptick in violent crime.
Sessions also equated cannabis to heroin, at once stating,
I reject the idea that America will be a better place if marijuana is sold in every corner store, and I am astonished to hear people suggest that we can solve our heroin crisis by legalizing marijuana so people can trade one life-wrecking dependency for another that's only slightly less awful.
In 2018, Sessions rescinded the Cole Memo and encouraged active enforcement, though this active enforcement of federal drug policy never materialized. Sessions faced critique from senators, including Kamala Harris.
What got less attention, guys, and also threatens our system of justice, was a memo that the Attorney General issued the following day to federal prosecutors across the country. The United States Department of Justice memo was entitled Department Charging and Sentencing Policy, a subject line that seems pretty tame. However, what it effectively did was to declare the reviving of the war on drugs, the failed war on drugs. And so let's take a look at what Jeff Sessions' outdated and out-of-touch views are doing that are going to be harmful to our country. Sessions has threatened that the United States Department of Justice may renew its focus on marijuana use, even in states like California where it is legal. Well, let me tell you, what California needs, Jeff Sessions, we need support in dealing with transnational criminal organizations, dealing with issues like human trafficking, not going after grandma's medicinal marijuana. Leave her alone.
Turning to another official, Sean Spicer, the first of 4 White House press secretaries for Trump, raised additional concerns about cannabis policy during briefings. Spicer expected greater enforcement on cannabis in individual states. Spicer also noted that there is a big difference between medical and recreational legalization.
Question for the Department of Justice. I do believe that you'll see greater enforcement of it because, again, there's a big difference between the medical use, which Congress has through an appropriations rider in 2014, made very clear what the intent of what their intent was in terms of how the Department of Justice would handle that issue. That's very different than the recreational use, which is something the Department of Justice, I think, will be further looking into.
Last, Spicer made a claim that is rooted in the gateway mythos, the idea that cannabis leads to harder drugs. He stated,
I think that when you see something like the opioid addiction crisis blossoming in so many states around this country, the last thing that we should be doing is encouraging people. There is still a federal law that we need to abide by.
Bob Ferguson, Democrat Attorney General for Washington at the time, who had a track record for advancing progressive drug policy reforms, including cannabis legalization, drug decriminalization, and a suit against Purdue Pharma. He stated that he was deeply disappointed by Spicer's position.
Washington Attorney General Bob Ferguson says he will use every tool at his disposal to defend Washington's voter-approved marijuana marketplace.
I take statements from the White House very seriously when they have the potential to adversely impact the people of the state of Washington, and that is how I interpret this.
Trump expressed his views on cannabis in several instances. In a leaked audio recording during a 2018 private donor diner, Trump implied that those who smoke cannabis lose IQ, intelligent quotient, points.
With a lot of the young,
the whole marijuana thing is a good thing?
I think it's a combination. I think it's something that is in the future, and no matter how you look at it, I think it's something that's already so far out that you're not going to stop it. I think you need to be ahead of it, and I think you need to control it and regulate it.
In Colorado, they have more accidents. It does cause an IQ problem.
No, I think he's right. No, there is minus.
You lose IQ points.
Yep. But then you take a look at your opioid crisis and then the veterans and the
But it's
children.
actually good for opioids.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's fight against, yeah.
I'll say this.
Yeah.
A claim that has been disputed by federal studies, including twin studies. On several occasions, Trump has praised the idea of expanding and streamlining the application of the death penalty to drug dealers.
The only way to solve the drug problem is through toughness. When you catch a drug dealer, you gotta put him away for a long time. When I was in China, and other places, by the way, I said, Mr. President, do you have a drug problem? No, we do not. I said, big country, 1.4 billion people, right? Not much of a drug problem. I said, what do you attribute that to? Well, the death penalty. So what do you mean no problem? We have a zero tolerance policy. What does that mean? That means if we catch a drug dealer, death penalty. That's why we have a problem, folks. And I don't think we should play games. Now, I never did polling on that. I don't know if that's popular. I don't know if that's unpopular. Probably you'll have some people that say, oh, that's not nice. But these people are killing our kids, and they're killing our families.
He also contrasted his previous support for medical legalization by sending a cease and desist letter to Mississippians for Compassionate Care, an organization that supported ballot initiative 65, which legalized cannabis for medical purposes, before being overturned by the state Supreme Court for using statements that suggested that he supported medical legalization, such as this previous comment.
For medical purposes, absolutely, it's fine.
The initial 2021 budget proposal included the removal of protections that barred federal resources from being used to prevent states from implementing medical cannabis policies, though this measure was later withdrawn. While the Trump administration exhibited grudging toleration towards cannabis, thank you, Wexler, the change in attitudes was reflected in public discourse by those media outlets accessed by that part of the population that is most likely to use cannabis, young men. Joe Rogan, whose podcast is popular among many, is well known for his support for legalization.
I know people that smoke marijuana and they're high functioning. And I know people that smoke marijuana and they don't get anything done. And I don't know if they're related. Those two things are related. I think people who generally have drive and discipline, marijuana gives them a break. It gives them a nice little rest stop. And I think that's probably beneficial.
Oh, I didn't see you there. You're listening to the Dazed and Confused podcast, so don't just sit there, dazed. Smash that like button, get subscribed, and scream something dumb in the comments like legalize pigeons.
Absolutely keep a hummingbird as a pet, bro. It's no different than having a parrot or a parakeet. It's a bird, bro.
You really can't? And I'm not saying I agree with it. It's just that bird law in this country, it's not governed by reason.
One well-known episode, viewed more than 7 million times on YouTube, included Steven Crowder, known for his Change My Mind series, along with the litany of discriminatory actions on the basis of race, nationality, sexuality, or gender identification, as well as,
what do you need me to pick up? I'll get it. I'll be back when I'm back.
No, that doesn't work either.
2 hours into the episode, Rogan and Crowder diverged on cannabis policy, including an instance where they bickered on traffic fatalities in legal states.
Since marijuana legalization, highway fatalities in Colorado are at
Hold on a
near
second.
historic lows.
You haven't bringing up the source that you want to find.
Washington
Bring up the
Post!
study right there. Yeah, Washington Post. Bring up the study that we wrote. We wrote about it on our website.
Look, I don't care about your website, you fuck. Since marijuana legalization, highway fatalities in Colorado
Since you
are
called me
at
hold on a second.
near
Since you called me a
lows!
fucking a puss, and you do this with the crazy lady at a comedy club.
Crowder's article stated,
if you want to get high, well, you're a moron. And getting high will make you more of a moron. But fine. After all, things like Coachella wouldn't exist if potheads weren't there to attend. Just don't drive, operate any machinery, or be around children. All things, by the way, a responsible person would have known. But since you're actively dumbing yourself down, on purpose, we have to spell it out for you. Thanks for that.
Later, in 2018, on an episode with more than 68 million views, venture capitalist Elon Musk smoked a joint with Rogan, stating,
So is that a joint? Or is it a cigar?
No.
Okay.
It's marijuana
it's
inside
weed.
of tobacco.
Oh, okay. So it's like pot tobacco
Yeah.
posh.
You never had that?
Yeah, I think I tried one once.
Come on, man. You want some of that? You probably can't because of stockholders, right?
I mean, it's legal, right?
It's totally legal.
Okay.
How does that work? Do people get upset at you if you do certain things? There's tobacco and marijuana in there. That's all it is. The combination of...
This action fanned the flame over Musk's actions because of a growing pattern of incendiary statements, including tweets about taking Tesla private at 420. On the day that the podcast was published, 2 executives had left Tesla amid a decline in stock price. As a federal contractor via SpaceX, Musk was subjected to random drug tests for a few years. However, reports later revealed that Musk would receive advance notice of these drug tests. He had reportedly consumed various psychedelics and used ketamine, at times daily. States continued to reform laws around cannabis. In 2018, 2 other states had legalized cannabis for adult use purposes. In Vermont, legalization occurred via legislators rather than the typical ballot initiatives, a first in the nation. Michigan became the 10th state in the nation and the first in the Midwest to legalize cannabis for adults. Hours before official commencement of adult use legalization in Illinois, Governor J.B. Pritzker issued pardons to more than 11,000 individuals convicted of low-level cannabis offenses. In April 2020, the ACLU issued a report entitled A Tale of Two Countries, Racially Targeted Arrests in the Era of Marijuana Reform, which examined nationwide arrests for cannabis offenses from 2010 to 2018. Arrests for cannabis were down overall, though not by much. Much of the decline had been driven by states that had either legalized or decriminalized cannabis. Racial disparities were prevalent, with black individuals 3.64 times more likely to be arrested for cannabis possession than whites, even though both groups used cannabis at similar rates. States that had legalized cannabis had lower rates of disparities than states where cannabis remained illegal. The authors declared,
"This report should be the final nail in the coffin for the inane war on marijuana, and sound yet another abolition knell for this country's 45-year drug prohibition charade.
States continued to legalize cannabis. In Arizona, a margin of 60% of voters passed legislation that legalized the possession and use of 1 ounce or less of cannabis. In New Jersey, by a margin of 67%, voters overwhelmingly legalized cannabis for adult use purposes. 57% of Montana voters passed legislation that legalized cannabis for adult use purposes. In South Dakota, 54% of voters amended the state's constitution to legalize cannabis for adult use purposes. However, in February of 2021, Christina Klinger, circuit court judge, ruled against the measure, a ruling which was later reaffirmed by the state Supreme Court during November 2021, thereby rejecting the will of the people. Near the end of the first Trump term, 2 significant lung-related health illnesses emerged, both of which would shape policy around cannabis and the way individuals administered the drug. By the end of 2019, a lung illness emerged among individuals who vaped, referred to either as vaping-associated lung injury, VALI, or sensationally as the vaping epidemic. This epidemic would result in 2,000 hospitalizations and over 60 deaths. Because the exact source of the contamination was initially unclear, several states restricted both nicotine and cannabis-based vaping products. In California, officials issued an advisory urging people to stop all forms of vaping until a cause was determined. Massachusetts enacted a 4-month ban on the sale of vaping products. The effect of this scare was evident in the regulated cannabis market, which experienced a 15% decrease in revenue from cannabis-based vaping products. Oregon experienced a 60% decrease. Many of the contaminated vape products were later linked to illicit cannabis vape products that had been adulterated with vitamin E acetate, which, when vaped, produces toxic fume. The second major lung illness turned pandemic was COVID-19. In March 2020, local, state, and federal lawmakers issued various public health ordinances. Cannabis businesses in most states were deemed essential, a stark contrast to the public menace of the 1970s. In Denver, Colorado, Mayor Michael Hancock initially issued an order that classified dispensaries and liquor stores as non-essential. Because of public outcry, Hancock released an updated order within 3 hours. In Massachusetts, adult use retail businesses were classified as non-essential, though later allowed to open near the end of May of 2020. Around this time, though, the number of new medical patients ballooned because medical businesses were deemed essential. Joseph E. Kennedy, law professor at University of North Carolina, stated,
"The fact that yesterday's vice is considered today's essential service suggests that we got the potential costs and benefits of marijuana used radically wrong."
COVID-19 also had an immense effect on the amount and type of cannabis, as well as the way that cannabis products were being sold. In San Francisco, the week following the stay-at-home order, regulated sales surged 150% compared to that period in the year prior. Reports emerged of dispensaries running out of cannabis. Edibles accounted for a significant portion of the increase in sales. Chris Beals, the CEO of Weedmaps, an online directory of dispensaries, explained,
"When people are working at home or they're around children or family, edibles are just more discreet."
Like other industries, cannabis businesses, both legal and illegal, operated delivery services. Owner of Jack Flash, an illegal delivery operation in New York City, stated,
"Our business doubled. Every day is a Friday. It's just been really nonstop."
A different dealer, identified as Chris, reported that customers no longer hung out at his apartment or chatted long after deliveries. During one transaction, Chris reported a customer handed him a box of disinfectant wipes with cash inside. One issue that regulated businesses face were their ineligibility to participate in the Paycheck Protection Program, PPP, loans. The 2020 election served as a pivotal point in cannabis policy. Joe Biden, the eventual victor, campaigned on the decriminalization and rescheduling of cannabis from Schedule 1 to 3.
As president, I'll work to reform the criminal justice system, improve community policing, decriminalize marijuana, and automatically expunge prior marijuana convictions. I'm Joe Biden, and that's my commitment to you, and I approve this message.
Trump, a known teetotaler, had rarely discussed the topic during the campaign outside of the administrative actions discussed earlier. Kamala Harris, the eventual vice president, stated during an interview that
they say you oppose legalizing weed.
That's not true.
I know.
and look, I joke about it, half joking. Half my family's from Jamaica. Are you kidding me? I believe we need to legalize marijuana. Now, that being said, this is not a but, it is an and we need to research, which is one of the reasons we need to legalize it. We need to move it on the schedule so that we can research the impact of weed based on a developing brain. If somebody is driving a car, it can be a lethal weapon in the hands of somebody who is impaired. So that needs to be addressed also. But I am absolutely in favor of legalizing marijuana. We've got to do it. We have incarcerated so many, in particular young men and young men of color. So there are a lot of reasons why we need to legalize.
Have you ever smoked?
I have.
Okay. Like in
And
college,
I inhale. I did inhale.
Okay.
It was a joint.
Hey.
Yeah.
You remember the high?
I do.
So if it was legalized all throughout the country and medicinal, would you do it?
Listen, I think that it gives a lot of people joy, and we need more joy.
We need more joy in this world.
the platforms of the two major parties diverged even more. The Democrats proposed that
substance use disorders are diseases, not crimes. Democrats believe no one should be in prison solely because they use drugs. Democrats will decriminalize marijuana use and reschedule it through executive action on the federal level. We will support legalization of medical marijuana and believe states should be able to make their own decisions about recreational use. The Justice Department should not launch federal prosecutions of conduct that is legal at the state level. All past criminal convictions for cannabis use should be automatically expunged. And rather than involving the criminal justice system, Democrats support increased use of drug courts, harm reduction interventions, and treatment diversion programs for those struggling with substance use disorders.
In contrast, the Republican National Convention announced that it would not adopt a new party platform and instead would continue with the 2016 platform.
The progress made over the last 3 decades against drug abuse is eroding, whether for cultural reasons or for lack of national leadership. In many jurisdictions, marijuana is virtually legalized despite its illegality under federal law.
In the next episode, we turn to the Biden administration, which could best be described as having a progressive intent. If you've enjoyed this episode, consider checking out my Patreon, where you can support this type of independent research for just $4.20 a month. Additionally, consider leaving a like. Comment something like,
Yeah, okay. And I just did.
Governor Bush, please.
So 40 years ago, I smoked marijuana, and I admit it. I'm sure that other people might have done it and may not want to say it in front of 25 million people. My mom's not happy that I just did. Please clap.
and subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful day.